We're here to discuss early quarterback and how early quarterback can dominate and win a league. Now, let me start off by saying that late quarterback, middle round quarterback, waiting on a quarterback can also dominate a league. Clearly, you can win 100,000 different ways. No one's saying you can't win with last year's Joe Burrow in round 6 or 7, which is this glorious man right here with this yellow mane. The Law Dog is the closest thing we have to Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts from last year and this year's 2023 fantasy football season. You can absolutely win a league with the yellow-haired lion, the man known as the Marshal, the Law Dog, the man with the yellow mane.
A lion lives among us, posing as half man, half lawman. His golden mane is reportedly 6 feet long and is bathed in milk.
That's right.
His marvelous mane grows longer with each breath he takes. Legend has it that if you say T-Law in the dark in the bathroom 3 times, you lose your league instantly. Conspiracy fanatics have linked his triangle bone structure to the ancient pyramids and alien theory.
But just because our community dominated last year, taking Joe Burrow, this man right here, and this man Jalen Hurts right here in round 6 and 7, and boy did we dominate. Doesn't mean we didn't also take Patrick Mahomes in round 3, Josh Allen in round 3, and just because we love now Jalen Hurts in round 2, Patrick Mahomes in round 2, that doesn't mean we always take those guys in round 2. That's not my point here today. My point here today is that there are 100,000 ways to win. And I'm going to explain to you when and where and why early quarterback can still absolutely dominate and why it's ridiculous. It is garbage. The take is garbage to suggest that going early quarterback puts you in a huge disadvantage or some sort of deficit. It's a dumb argument. I've been arguing against this stance for years, this anti-early quarterback stance, because people don't explain it right. People are not honest about it. When to go Joe Burrow, when to go the Lion, when to go Josh Allen, when to go Mahomes or Jalen Hurts. The Fantasy Football Show Early Quarterback Edition begins right now.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty. Take a lap.
The thing about early quarterback that people regurgitate over and over is that
there's so many good quarterbacks.
You're better off waiting. Don't waste an early pick on a
quarterback, Smitty.
And while that sounds logical, no one is comparing apples to apples when they say such a blatant, vague statement. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks. There's a lot of everything. There's a lot of tight ends. There's a lot of wide receivers, a lot of running backs. You've got to compare apples to apples. And in a quick nutshell, looking at a scenario like this one right here, Joe Burrow in round 4 absolutely crushes. In fact, it's my favorite quarterback play in 2023. He's neither early quarterback because early quarterback is in round 2 with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. Those 3 big dogs go in round 2. So technically speaking, Joe Burrow's kind of middle round. He's not late quarterback. He's not early quarterback. He's middle to early round quarterback. And that makes him an absolute monster home run. And if I had to rank the quarterback strategy here, Joe Burrow in round 4, or sometimes this man actually falls to like 5.2, 5.1, 5.3. This is the best strategy on planet Earth walking into 2023. End of story, case closed. I've got to pick one thing to repeat, rinse and repeat over and over. It's Joe Burrow round 4, round 5. It's the best strategy you could deploy. But does it mean that it's the only strategy that if I picked a quarterback early, didn't know Joe Burrow would fall to round 4, that I'm going to be making a mistake? No. Let's take Chris Olave out of the round 2. In fact, let's remove everybody from the board just to keep it simple. This is kind of the placement of the quarterbacks right now. You've got Fields in the 4-5, but sometimes 5-6. You've got Trevor Lawrence, the lion-maned yellow-haired monster in the 6, sometimes 7, but we'll call him around 6 just to be safe here. These are great placements for every single one of these guys. Somebody that tells you don't go early quarterback doesn't know what they're talking about. I am looking at 6 monsters at their ADP, all of which very much could earn their value without any disadvantage, without any deficit in terms of your fantasy football build. It's ridiculous to argue that any one of these 6 guys wouldn't absolutely crush their ADP. Trevor Lawrence is the closest thing to Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts that we have on the board. Fields is very close because he's fallen a little bit. Lamar Jackson is the reason that these guys are all falling. Lamar's climbed into round 3. Lamar is in round 3, and that's bumped Joe Burrow down to 4 and locked him into 4. And really, the end of 4. Joe Burrow is exiting round 4. He's like in the final 4 picks ADP-wise on Underdog Fantasy. Promo code Smitty, by the way. They'll match up to $100 in your first deposit. If you do partake in a little Underdog Fantasy, promo code Smitty, using the link in the description, which enters promo code Smitty for you. Again, they'll match up to $100 in your first deposit, but you could also get in the drafts with us every single Thursday, Friday, Saturday if you want to draft with me. But when you go to Underdog, and the ADP is the best because people are paying money for every entry, so the ADP is very accurate. People stay until the entire draft is over versus you go on a mock draft platform, people leave after the 3rd, 4th round. Computer selections pile onto the bad ADP data. This is the most accurate ADP data around because they're paying entries. Everybody's paying good money to play in every single one of these drafts. The draft data tells us Joe Burrow is in the final 4 picks of round 4, and it's because of Lamar Jackson, who I don't condone taking this year because you have all these other options around. Lamar's shoving Fields into round 5. He's sometimes still in the bottom of 4, but you could see him right around this top of 5 territory. Trevor Lawrence is easily in the late 5 to early 6, sometimes 7, and it's all because of this man Lamar. It's like throwing ice cubes into a glass of water. There's only so much room before things get moved around when you add one more ice cube in. Adding Lamar Jackson into the bucket of quarterbacks is moving them backwards, and we need to take advantage of it. We would not have Joe Burrow in round 4, almost breaching round 5 if it were not for Lamar's climb. Fields climbed up above Burrow for a while and shoved Burrow into round 4, but Lamar took Fields' spot, and now Fields dropped below Burrow, and it's this big constant cycle. But these 3 guys are value grabs of the big name quarterbacks. Of the early quarterback potential guys, these 3 have been raptured from the early rounds and have been placed in middle rounds. This to me is the best late round quarterback you could find in T-Law. If you want to go that route, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to go that route, as long as you're not peddling out it's a bad move to take Burrow or Mahomes or Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, Smitty, early when you can get a quarterback later. As long as you're not peddling that out there, I don't mind that your approach is, I do actually love the Fields approach. I'm going to try it in this league if I can. That's fine. That's fine. You can win a league. You can dominate a league with Trevor Lawrence in round 6, sometimes 7. You can dominate with Fields in 5, 6. I do it all the time. But this right here is the ultimate strategy. Almost round 5, Joe Burrow. That wins you a league more than any of the other quarterback selections here. But does it mean you can't, if you land a perfect draft, if you land an amazing draft and land your other players, have just as good a shot? You easily could. There's no deficit or mistake by going these guys early. It has to be looked at as an apples to apples comparison. So let's take everybody out of here but one of these early quarterbacks. We'll leave Jalen Hurts in there. Even if we pit it against our late quarterback darling right here in Trevor Lawrence, because I don't want to use a quarterback I don't like. Let's pit our number 1 quarterback against our number 6 quarterback, so we really can make this argument effectively. So you're taking him in the middle of 5, 6. You're taking him at the top of 2. What wide receiver am I missing out by going Jalen Hurts in round 2? Let's use a wide receiver I love in Amon-Ra St. Brown. So the anti-early quarterback drafter is taking Amon-Ra. I'm taking Jalen Hurts, and now I'm getting laughed at because I'm going early quarterback and the person getting Amon-Ra is not. So what wide receiver am I getting in round 5? Let me put it this way and say that there is a man falling on ADP, and his name is Drake London, and he's falling around this 5 territory, not always to the end of 5, but in that range. And so if you were, let's say, able to grab a Drake London and Jalen Hurts versus a T-Law and an Amon-Ra St. Brown, if you were able to land Hurts and London over T-Law, who we love, that's our favorite late quarterback. I'm using the best example I can to try and emphasize my point of apples to apples needing to be compared here. London and Hurts crush Amon-Ra and T-Law, in my opinion. I firmly believe that in a worst case scenario, I can make this even. I don't think anybody's ever going to have two better players than me. I'm either going to have the advantage or it will be equal in the worst case scenario. In this case, I have the advantage if I went Hurts and Drake London. And London sometimes goes in 4. Like on Underdog Fantasy, London goes in the mid to late 4th right now. You can sometimes get him 5 in a draft. I've done it before on Underdog plenty of times, but if you're drafting on ESPN, London's a 5th rounder. If you're drafting on ESPN, Olave is a 3rd rounder, and people laugh at you when you talk about him in the 2nd round. So let's be clear that depending on where you're drafting, you can get away with different things. So let's go into a world where we're with a bunch of sharks. We're with people like us. You're not going to get London in 5. You're not. So now we got to look at something from a different angle. And on the flip side, let's pretend T-Law can be had a little bit later. Now, let's say T-Law does in fact fall into the middle of 6, can't use him. Let's use Jahan Dotson, who goes like at around 7. I'll even go past round 6 and say that my Jalen Hurts and Jahan Dotson at least equal to the Law Dog and Amon-Ra St. Brown. And you could go Mahomey here. Obviously, it's pretty much the same thing. Even if we take this man out, we put Kadarius Toney in this 7 spot, and let's take out T-Law and put another quarterback in round 7. Let's make this really interesting, and we go, okay, Deshaun Watson in round 7, let's say. Deshaun Watson round 7, Kadarius Toney in round 7, and we go Mahomey in round 2 and St. Brown in round 2. My Mahomes and Kadarius Toney, in my opinion, crush Deshaun Watson and Amon-Ra St. Brown. You might disagree, and that's why we play the game. But to me, in my mind, you can't beat me. Every single time we compare apples to apples, your quarterback that you take, I'm grabbing a sleeper breakout monster where you're grabbing your quarterback. And then when you say, well, I'm going to go wide receiver, running back in round 2, I'm crushing it with a guy that could absolutely lead the entire fantasy football world in scoring. And this gets even easier to do if we start talking RB. My point is this. My point is that you can do what you want with your strategy. Maybe you love Deshaun Watson. You think he's top 5 and you're getting him in 7, so you're going to go down that road. If Deshaun Watson is your version of last year's Hurts or Burrow, 2 players we predicted. Early quarterback defending man right here. Taught fantasy worlds how to win with Jalen Hurts and Burrow last year. I am not saying don't go down that road with the yellow-haired lion. Those are 2, I'm saying up front, those are 2 of my very favorite draft strategies in 2023. Burrow in round 4 and Trevor Lawrence in round 6. But the thing is, these guys are not middle to late round, and middle to late round quarterbacks. These guys are almost early quarterbacks. Joe Burrow should be in round 2. The reason Joe Burrow wins leagues more than any other quarterback is that this is a round 2 guy. He belongs in round 2 with Josh Allen, Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts, but somebody magically plucked him out of here. The early quarterback fairy took him out of round 2 and dropped him in round 4, and nobody's saying anything. They almost dropped him off in round 5. But he's sitting there, and you need to understand that is the best value on the entire quarterback board. On the quarterback heat map, there's no quarterback busting off with a big red draft me right now than Joe Burrow, and this is a fantastic play. But make no mistake about it, if you decide before you even get to round 4 or 6, you're trying to make your assumptions early on, you're like, I want a little Jalen Hurts action, as you should, because this guy could outscore every quarterback in fantasy football. This guy could be the #1 scorer in fantasy football by a lot. There's nothing wrong with building a team with Jalen Hurts. In fact, I've done it about 15, 20 times this month alone on Underdog Fantasy, promo code Smitty. Even loving Joe Burrow the way I do. Use code Smitty, get up to $100 bonus match on your first deposit, and do this now so you're ready to draft with us on Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays. But as I was saying, even though I love the Joe Burrow approach, one of my favorite strategies in 2023 is still going Jalen Hurts in round 2. Let's say I'm taking Bijan in round 1, I'm taking Jalen Hurts in round 2. In your grandma league, you might get Olave in round 3 and you be dominating. Let's try out a no wide receiver until round 4 and 5 approach, and let's throw in Jahmyr Gibbs. You're telling me that you can't walk into a draft and dominate your league by starting off with Bijan, Jalen Hurts, and Jahmyr Gibbs, 2 top 10 running backs, one of which could be #1 overall. The other guy could be 5 to 10. You're telling me you can't walk into your draft and dominate starting off with a Christian Watson? Like I said earlier, maybe you get lucky and you get a Drake London in 5. Or let's say you get Drake London in 4. You get Jahan Dotson in 6 or 7. We'll put Dotson there. And of course, you do something amazing in your 5th and 6th round. I mean, you could build a monster team going Jalen Hurts in round round 2. And let's say you take out Gibbs and he gets sniped or something. And remember, this is actually possible in a lot of leagues. Olave's ADPs in the 3rd and 4th round in ESPN mock drafts, so you don't know where you're going to encounter Olave. If you drop this right here, actually, let's go one step further. This guy's ADP is back in the 4th round. Jahmyr Gibbs, by the way, underdog ADP has Jahmyr Gibbs underdog. Code Smitty. They'll match up to $100 in your first deposit. When we draft on underdog, Jahmyr Gibbs is back in round 4. Safely nestled inside round 4. He's not at the 3.12 to 4.1 turn. We're talking about a handful of picks nestled into round 4. This is 100% possible. You go Bijan in 1, Gibbs in 4, and you take Hurts and Chris Olave in a grandma league where he falls. And if he doesn't fall, then we'll throw in Christian Watson, who we do love in round 3, or vice versa if you feel more comfortable doing this little number. And Jahan Dotson later, Pickens, whoever you want later, Mike Evans in round 7, 8. How do you not win with this? How do you not win with Jalen Hurts in round 2? I'm so tired of hearing about it. And while I love Joe Burrow, and you know I do, there's not a big difference between going, let's say, Olave here, and we'll put him out here, and Joe Burrow here. So if you take Joe Burrow in 4, which I love, and you get Olave in round 2, what's the big difference between going Hurts here instead and Christian Watson here instead? Not that big of a difference. You could argue Hurts and Watson equal Olave and Burrow. My point being is stop listening to the dumb commentary and content creation around early quarterback being bad. I've just explained why all of it's good. I've just explained why you can win all different avenues. You can win with Fields in 5. You can win with the Law Dog in 6 or 7. You can crush with it. And you can absolutely crush with Hurts in 2, Mahomes in 2, Josh Allen in 2, Burrow in 4. It all comes down to, do you land your sleepers and breakouts and land the right picks? That's all it comes down to. But having a solid quarterback, one of the 6 guys I'm talking about, is really the only play for me because they're sprinkled out all over the board. There's no excuse for going in and landing a Danny Dimes combination crew at your quarterback position. Draft one of the big 6, take your pick as to where you want to take one, and go dominate your league already. Okay, so the final conclusion though, and I know you've been watching a 15-minute video on this and you're like, what do I do now? I like everybody. Here's the actual sticking point in the part where I believe I can guide you in the right direction. This right here, this statement right here, this little couple statements. If you're amazing at drafting wide receivers and running backs in round 2, then Joe Burrow is probably your avenue, or Trevor Lawrence in round 6. If you're amazing at drafting 4th and 5th and 6th round running backs and wide receivers, then use what I'm saying here to have confidence to go in and take Jalen Hurts, Mahomes, or Josh Allen in round 2.
Does that make sense?
I'm giving a person that is normally scared to go quarterback early free reign to do so if you know you're so good at 4th, 5th, and 6th round running back and wide receiver drafting. That is the point. Know your strength and know what to do. Know where to go in the draft for your wide receivers and running backs, and choose the quarterback that I've mapped out all over the board accordingly. That's how you dominate. Don't draft based on somebody else's best draft strategy. Use best player available and dominate your way. And get on over to thefantasyfootballshow.com. Get your year-round fantasy football rankings, bold predictions, text advice, everything you need to dominate your league. The trade calculators. Get on over there now. Now, go get out of here and dominate the early quarterback draft strategy and
Crush your league.
A lion lives among us, posing as half man, half lawman. His golden mane is reportedly 6 feet long and is bathed in milk.
That's right.
His marvelous mane grows longer with each breath he takes. Legend has it that if you say T-Law in the dark in the bathroom 3 times, you lose your league instantly. Conspiracy fanatics have linked his triangle bone structure to the ancient pyramids and alien theory.
This is the Fantasy Football Show with your host, Smitty.
Take a lap.